Hello, I'm Jack Rickard with EVTV. This is my compadre and consigliere, old Breno Noto.
Hey, good to be here.
It's good to be here, the last show of the season, isn't it?
It is. We're going to talk about all the great things of 2011. We're going to have to fire this damn cameraman back here. He's making me laugh.
He's a pretty funny,
funny guy.
But part of it is you're just not used to having a cameraman.
I know, running back and forth, trying to do it all at once.
Poor Brian has to run back and forth to be on camera and behind the camera.
And sometimes we don't have any sound. We don't know till after.
Well, it's been an interesting year.
It has.
I have to tell you, we're not making any money.
No, we're not.
You used to be the greatest ad salesman in the world. What's going on?
Well, we need help from the community out there. Either they think we're stupid and don't have any value, or they just don't know our address to send the checks.
Are we just too early in this industry? We've got two groups, it looks like.
Yeah.
And that is, one, guys that are cottage industry, have never really had a business before, are selling 8 to 11 units a month.
Right.
And living hand to mouth, who can't imagine spending anything on advertising to get the word out and get more customers. And then we have these PowerPoint dandies who are raising $100 million and then running around furiously trying to sell to the same 6 OEMs over and over.
That the rest of them are.
Who are never going to buy their product, and if they did, they're going to then steal it and leave them with nothing.
Leave them with nothing, exactly.
General
in the meantime,
General Motors actually now makes their own electric motors for EVs. And Ramey, that's what they're doing, flailing around out there, trying to get their motor in the hands of somebody that can make a sale.
Anybody that would care, yeah.
A123 Interdell, they're in deep trouble over trying to sell solely to OEMs. The hubris, I gotta tell you, bothers me. Back in the internet days, we knew we didn't know.
Right, and that is a good thing. To know what you don't know is awfully powerful.
It is.
It's very, very powerful.
We didn't know where the next dollar was coming from, and neither did anybody else in the industry. You'd announce a product and be amazed at who might respond. But you sold to anybody that could come up with the $20 or whatever it was.
Or 20,000 or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Whatever it was. Yep.
And you'd be surprised, the alliances and things. I mean, Cisco Systems was 3 guys. Mm-hmm. And that was way before there was a Google or a Spider or a Yahoo.
Yes, remember Spider, I remember
or
that.
even a web.
Yeah, web crawler.
And so you can't predict who the players are going to be in a disruptive new industry.
Right. Not this early. There's nothing you can't tell.
And so they're squandering hundreds of millions of dollars qualifying their customers so they don't have to do the hard work of dealing with the public. And wouldn't it be great if we could just come up with something and sell our intellectual property to one big fish in one big score and cash out and go to the Bahamas?
It's a great idea.
You know, people have done it, but it's kind of like winning the lottery. That's not how business actually goes.
Not normally, yeah.
And so they're going to have to smarten up this year, or we're going to take George Hamster and go start a fishing tournament and get out of this EV thing. I mean, we can't just subsidize it forever. But I think we're doing a good thing. One of the other things I've noticed about this industry is, and it's kind of the famine. We're in a famine, Brian. Our economy is in a famine.
It is.
There's a job famine. There's a money famine. And everyone's dealing out of fear.
Fear, yep.
Fear and
afraid.
Greed, alternate waves of fear and greed. You do not have to live afraid. You're not going to miss any meals. It's kind of the background of my stone soup story.
Well, the EV, the electric vehicle conversion convention, we know they'll eat for at least 5 days.
Well, right.
You only have 360 more to worry about.
I think we'll see a lot of changes this year as people gain confidence. Anyway, what kind of news have you encountered this week? What have you got?
Well, let's see. And I've kind of brought up this, plethora of news like we did last time. Some things count directly, some things don't. But the Cracker Barrel restaurants, Cracker Barrel, where they have like little porch and stuff, and I guess they serve a lot of comfort type American food.
I like Cracker Barrel.
They are actually in I can't remember the city, in Tennessee, across Tennessee, are installing chargers, 480 volt.
Level 3
Level
charger.
3 chargers, yes, at Cracker Barrel.
And therein lies the tale. There was a guy trying to drive across Tennessee from Nashville to somewhere, and he got to one of the Cracker Barrels, and one of the level 3 chargers was out of commission.
Oh.
And he was on his way to a wedding.
Uh-oh.
And so he had to stop and do level 2
Level
charging.
2, that's a little longer.
It was a little delay, and he got there a little bit late. And so the infrastructure isn't really there yet. Level 3 charging is interesting.
That's, yeah.
And we're going to have to develop a strategy in 2012 for EVs that we build to put in to be able to hook up to these level 3 chargers. Now, they don't really have a standard yet.
They don't yet, no.
Nissan's got one, and they're using basically, I guess, the Chademo.
The Chademo one, right? And then we've got the SAE, I guess, in the middle of all this.
Those guys.
Yeah. And I guess, isn't Tesla and some other people even trying to make their own charge
Tesla's
port?
got another one.
They got another one. And this is not a good thing to not have a standard plug. This is craziness.
Yeah, we're going to have to get there. The hysteria over level 2 charging.
Oh, man.
Millions of dollars pledged by the U.S. government and cities across the land, and it's useless.
Now, tomorrow, I guess up to, it was a 30 or 50% subsidy for installing a charger is gone away. It's tomorrow night it expires. I guess a couple of other ones do too.
Yeah, actually, and a bunch of this is tied up with that
Continuing of the payroll
tax
thing. Yep.
But 2 things for EV guys was there is a $1,000 tax credit for installation of a level 2 charger in your home, and you do want to get that and get it in before the end of the year, which will be
tomorrow. Before you see this, it's over.
If you see
Sorry,
this,
guys.
you've already missed it. The other one is if you convert any car to electric drive, you can take 10% of the costs up to $4,000.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's like $4,000.
Is it 10% or 20%? Up to $4,000.
Yeah. And that again expires.
If we had any income, we could make a fortune.
we can make a fortune. That's right. Tax credits.
Without income, these tax credits don't really do much good. They don't help me. And then, of course, there's the $7,500 subsidy for the purchase of a new car from an OEM.
And I think that one stays. I think that one's good. I think that one's going to still be continued. It was conversion chargers, and I can't remember the other one. I may actually have something in here. I don't remember. But I think that they're going to be pretty good. Let's see, what else can we predict? The 100-watt light bulb future is looking pretty bleak for 2012.
Is it?
I guess that the incandescent bulb I guess there'll be a black market. That's how we can make some money. We can just buy some 100-watt bulbs down at Lowe's and just sell them on eBay.
Is that
after they're against the law? Yeah. Yeah. So
So
things are not looking good for the $100 watt bulb. Yeah, at least a 100-watt one.
I'm okay with that.
Me too.
I got to tell you.
Yeah, it's fine.
The 100-watt light bulb puts out about, I'm going to make this up, but I'll be closer than most of you guys that know. I think you do. 12 watts, lumens per watt.
Yeah, that's not much.
The compact fluorescents that you can buy now are 60 to 85 watts
lumens per watt. Yeah.
Which is 6 or 7 times more efficient.
Yeah.
You can drive your car off the electricity in your house that you save by getting off these incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing against Edison, but they're as much a
That's
heater
old tech.
as they
Right.
are a lighter.
Right, that's like a good radiant heater, yeah.
Yeah, they're mostly heat,
Yeah.
which also raises your air conditioning bill in
Right,
the summer.
right.
And you know me, I like a lot of light. We like the area, like an airport, all around my house and here at the shop and so forth. But increasingly, we're going to the compact fluorescents. I think we're not moving fast enough to the LEDs.
The LEDs
now,
are even a bigger
we do
boom.
on the cars quite a bit.
Yep, and it, man, we're pulling half of an amp where we used to pull, you know,
6 or 8 amps.
Yeah.
We're doing a half an amp. That LED is the way to light things. That should be the artificial light of the future. In the lab, I'm told Cree's doing 360 lumens per watt.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And so if you have a 12 lumens per watt on a 100 watt bulb,
Yeah.
that's going to give you 1200 lumens. With that Cree LED, you could do that on 4 watts.
Yeah, but that's amazing. And even as the LED stuff starts to drop out of the bottom of the technology, you know, the lower stuff, it's gonna be great for people.
Yeah, see, the
LEDs,
reason I'm not into the famine, the jobs and the economy and so forth, is we can and have many times in the past innovated our way out of such holes and into whole new phases of incredible prosperity. To the point where we've had whole wars that didn't wind up as a line item in the budget.
Right.
America's really a very rich land.
Yeah.
And mostly in our people and our innovation. And however you thought it was, some kid comes along with a change and it's all different. Imagine our bleak energy situation, but if we just went to the residences and went from 100 watts to 4 watts
Right. Wow,
in
what a
every
difference.
light bulb socket in the country, the amount of energy in the United States that would be saved there. We could drive our cars for 100
Yeah,
years
it'd be free.
for free.
It'd be free driving, yep. Yeah.
I mean, it's an absurd level of number. It's what
Yeah.
I call a Brazilian. It's beyond a number
how do you,
that I
how do
know
you
how many
comprehend it?
zeros
Yeah.
that it is.
That's right.
You know, that factor is huge. The improvement we get from a magnetic electric drive on a car is about 8 times as efficient as an internal combustion engine. That's a huge efficiency gain. But there's more out there, including a 25-time increase going from an incandescent light bulb, a heater, to an LED bulb.
Yeah.
Now, what does an LED bulb cost? I don't know. We haven't installed them in 100 million homes yet.
Yeah, right.
Same adoption
Same
curve
thing, guys.
thing.
Yep.
Where is our
They're expensive
leadership
now.
on this? Here's Barack Obama. If all families would install just one compact flash bulb, bullshit. How about the head of the largest nation on the earth saying, hey, why don't we productize LED light bulbs and get a 25-fold increase and replace all of them?
And then we'd have a mission people could follow and innovation, and we'd also have great savings. It'd be great for the country.
And by the way, it would have to take a
And an
lot
industry.
of people making light bulbs to do that. Do you know how many is in 100 million residences?
Yeah, that's right.
It's over 90 million.
That's right. That's right. There would be
A little
lot of
less than 110 million,
Yeah,
right? That's a lot of light bulbs.
a lot of light bulbs. Yeah, it would take an army of people to change. Imagine that.
Yes, it does. And I'm not saying the federal government has to get into the job of making light bulbs, but it's a bully pulpit to name that as a national
Right.
priority.
We got to the moon.
And there are ways to, do that. So the same thing with the gasoline and so forth. So I'm very optimistic about the future, and I very much believe in the power and the value of individuals. As our population has grown, we have devalued to the point of sin in our corporations and in our society the worth of individual people. That is where our strength comes from, and it's where it always has.
It always
come
does.
from.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
And So we should continue. We had a contest in 2011. Man, was that a pain in the ass.
It was. I mean, it was fun. It was great to get to the end, but it was a lot getting to there.
It raised quite a bit of interest. I had to read 900 entries of people that wanted to build an electric car. Kind of wounded me emotionally, but I got through it. This is a letter from our winner, Brandon Hollinger.
Oh, Brandon, all right, cool.
And Brandon and I are like on opposite ends of the political scale in the world. We're on opposite ends age-wise. We just live in different worlds, but have found a common cause in this concept of electric vehicles as a smooth solution to a number of problems, however you define the problems. And he entered a contest and very artfully won it with some videos. And we're hoping for some updates
To get some
from
up,
him.
I think he's going to start on pretty diligently right after the first
But
of
I
the year,
was
right?
quite touched.
Yeah.
He wrote me an old-fashioned letter. I used to be kind of a man of letters, and so I haven't received a handwritten letter in many years, actually. December of 2011. Dear Jack, your shows and contributions to the global EV conversion community are speeding the movement forward. The automobile has gone from an engineering monstrosity to an open source home DIY project. Presenting our successes and failures publicly in excruciating detail is exactly what will allow this technology to mature and evolve quickly. FCon 2011 was incredible, so I hear, but I can't imagine the beast that will emerge in 2012 now that there's a fertile discussion group engine running. Then there's the contest. I'd love to see a global map of the voting that took place. Maybe. Let me think about that. It must be impressive, though this country is justifiably skeptical these years. We do long for some good news. Campaigning for votes is fun when you believe what you're saying. Yes, it's good to have a mission. The EV message speed spread on its own merits, Jack. Jaded adults are reduced to kids. At Christmas time, when we open our hoods, like heat transfer, the truth can be slowed down, but never stopped indefinitely. Thank you for the Build Your Dream EV prize and for making the contest accessible to a random guy like me. I'll do all I can to bring this together quickly and safely. Thanks also for encouraging words before the acceptance speech, and for all your hospitality the final evening. Honored to know you, Brandon C. Hollinger. Merry Christmas.
Oh, nice. Very good.
Isn't
Nice,
it a
Brandon.
nice
Thank
letter?
you.
He's doing an Austin FX. Sent a little card with his Saab.
Oh, yeah, that's
on
right.
the
The
front.
Saab project.
Very
yeah.
creative guy.
Yeah, he is.
And doing some creative cars. Understand how powerful that is in this world, while they continue to look to the OEMs for leadership. OEMs are followers, individuals are leaders. Individuals like Brandon, if he goes and converts a car, this happens kind of in public. His friends and neighbors will
Yep.
see that car, and that has a much higher level of credibility than something they see on TV or read online.
Right.
They get to see and touch it directly. And so it becomes kind of a life-changing event that he has fostered. And individuals like that, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of tipping points and so forth. There's a number of studies about how change migrates through populations of people, birds, dogs, rats, and fish.
Honeybees.
And honeybees. And it's amazing how few are involved in actually bringing the group to the tipping point and changing their direction. And so I believe in people like Brandon Hollinger enough to put together a $20,000 combination there to foster that, and I think that his project will have a lot of impact, quite beyond Lancaster,
I
Pennsylvania.
think too, yeah.
And I'm confident that so. We'd of course like to see your videos.
Absolutely.
He kind of won the contest with videos, but the holiday season, he's very much involved in the entertainment world, and
Yeah,
that's how he
busy
makes
time
his
for
living.
him, yeah, yeah.
And so, don't give up your day job, but
That's right, not yet.
but we can't wait to see a little video update on the Austin
His
FX.
Austin project, yeah.
That brings up another topic that we should probably discuss and like your thoughts on. We need to do this. Alan Levinson did a
Yep.
1999 Volkswagen, the new Beetle,
Yep.
conversion, and was at our show in September and liked it and went home, renewed, and wanted to finish his project. Here's his video. Let's take a look at that.
Okay, cool.
Hi, Jack and Brian and everybody from EVTV. It's Alan Levinson from Manalapan, New Jersey. And Manalapan is about 40 miles southwest of New York City. And you're looking at a 1999 Volkswagen Beetle that's now all electric. Came back from the EV convention with a renewed spirit. I was looking to really finish this vehicle up and show it off to everyone at the EV convention. Now, I have in the back an aluminum battery box that's sunk down about 10 inches. 36 calib lithium ion 180 amp hour cells. Across that I use the aluminum honeycomb that Jack always talks about, and I attached the charger and the DC to DC converter on that. That's removable. That uses the same connections as the Lexon top. So I could basically, if I need to, just rip that off. I've got the Anderson connectors that Jack doesn't like, but they work fine for me right now. So I can pull that off and bench test anything I need to bench test. Let's swing around to the front. I've got 12 more batteries in a battery box that's mounted to the rear firewall and a rail across the frame. Attached to that battery box is a Curtis 1230 controller. I have the fuse and the shunt right in front there. I'm going to be putting a Lexon cover on top of that so it's kid-proof. I have a pot box on the other side. My goal here is to make everything very accessible and removable. So I could at any time swap out, change, repair things if they need repairing. I have the Masterflux AC compressor. I don't have the controller mounted yet, but that's going to be mounted in this open spot that you're looking at now. Underneath the AC compressor is a power steering pump. And I have the vacuum pump right behind that light. And the vacuum gauge is there. On top of the Lexon box here with the 12 volts is a control box that has all my relays, contactors, inertia switch. This is my second EV project. My first EV was a science project. It was a lead acid project. So I took out everything from that 99 S10 and pushed it over here into the, it was a 94 S10, I moved it here into the 99 Volkswagen. Got a manual cutoff in between the two seats. Other than that, I put a I've got the 3 gauges, I've got a vacuum gauge, I've got the Expert Pro battery monitor and an amp meter. Everything else is the standard Volkswagen equipment. And I still have access to the back seat. there's my AC controller, which I need to install. So this is just a quick overview. I wanted to let everyone know to continue their project. You can do it if I can do it. I sell insurance. That's what I do for a living. This hobby with no electrical, small mechanical ability, I'm able to knock this off. So thanks, Jack. Thanks for your help. Contacted you a couple of times. You helped me out. And everybody at EVTV. I have the build on YouTube. It's Sagon Motors. That's Sagon, no gas. So it's SAGON Motors 1. You could view all my videos that show the actual construction. So still have a couple of minor issues to take care of, some minor body work that has to be done, and some I'm going to upgrade the brakes, upgrade the suspension. But I'll keep you informed as to mileage and range. So it's Alan from Manalapan, New Jersey, and take care, everyone. Okay, it's Alan and I'm back, and it's time you went on your first electric ride, if you've never been on an electric ride, for an electric converted car. So let's go. So the only thing holding this thing is its emergency brake. Because the electric motor is just a free spinning motor, if you put it in gear like a regular manual car, you're moving. So the manual emergency brake is the only thing that holds this. So when you first turn it on, of course you hear the beepers from the regular car, but that whine is the air pump, the vacuum pump. So if you notice, that'll kick off at about 20. Again, we have all these bells and whistles from the old VW. Okay, now that low whine is the electric power steering pump. So that's the only thing you hear. That's it. She's on. All right, I released the emergency brake, and actually in my garage it's on an angle, so we're going to roll out. And as I brake, you could see that the... Okay, so anyway, I'll just roll out and we'll go on a ride. I get all of the lights from the regular car are still on. I don't know if you can see them, so... Well, now it's in reverse. You don't need to clutch, but you can if you want. It's in first. See, we still have the check engine light on. Well, just going around the block. Second. And it's quiet. So if you turn the radio on, you know, you hear your music. That works really nice. And you can have conversations with people. And if you roll down the windows, you just get the wind rushing, the air, the sound of the wind. So the roads still need to be paved. A lot of them, so you avoid them because this car only has 6 inches of clearance. That's the regular Volkswagen clearance on this. Another white dog. And there you go. That was a ride around the block, right around my neighborhood. And there's your electric car. And I got my meters. It shows me my amps as I put your foot on the gas. Oh, better check my water and my engine. There's your first electric ride.
NetGain Motors, home of the Warp, Transwarp, and Impulse motors, introduced the improved Warp 9 motor. The Warp 9 is a 9 1/4 diameter series wound DC motor with a double-ended shaft featuring 26 improvements for 2010. Externally, the terminal studs have been enlarged from 3/8 to 1/2 inch diameter. Bigger is better. On the inside, a larger commutator, new brush composition, and split brush design with heavier springs handle even higher voltages and currents than before. Our new fan increases airflow by almost 50% over typical paddle-style fans. And all this translates into improved performance. For even more performance or larger applications, take a look at NetGain's Warp 11 motor, an 11 3/4 diameter series wound DC motor for even greater torque and power. Since 2002, NetGain Motors has been leading the EV industry with precision, performance, and price. Visit us at go-ev.com. NetGain Motors, warp power to go.
Nice build.
Yep, very nice build.
Volkswagen Beetle is, that's a nice size.
Uh-huh.
And it has all the environmentals.
Yep.
And all that works. But what he puts me in mind of is something we noticed. We had, 28 cars in September?
Yeah, yep, we had about 28 cars, yes.
That surprised me. We actually had close to 40 register. We had too low a registration fee for people that brought cars. Some of them just didn't have enough skin in the game. We're gonna have the discount this year, $99 if you bring a car. It's going to be a $599 conference.
Yes.
And so $500 discount if you bring a car, but of course you have to ship the car. And
yeah, they've got some expenses. Yeah,
some kind of an expensive thing. Why did that have such success in the first year? And again, you see Alan wanting to have his car seen by his peers.
Exactly. Yep.
And anybody that makes an electric car can take them to a local car show for no money and show them off to a bunch of people who want to know how far and how long
does it take to charge. That's right.
But I think there's a legitimate urge to take the craftsmanship and the effort that's involved in converting one of these and show it to people that know about this.
Yes.
Where George Hamster can look at your car, and Sebastian Bourgeois.
Right.
And
some guys with some really nice builds.
That know and have been around electric cars for a long time. Some of the industry stars can look at your work and see how you've done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I noticed a lot of people like that at the show. What can we do to make that more of a gig?
Wow. Well, we could have the show have some nice prizes, I suppose.
That's where I think we're going to have to go with this. Any car show has the judge classes and stuff. Now, we're not going to do it like the local hot rod shows where everybody gets a trophy.
No.
That's
just
not going to happen.
Because not everybody's a trophy car.
But I could see 2 or 3 classes. For example, the best full-size production vehicle conversion, and the best scratch belt car, and the best tricycle, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
Or alternative vehicle, lawnmower.
Best airplane.
The best airplane. 3 or 4 classes, but then some significant, like $4,000 or $5,000 prizes to be awarded to
For the
winner.
car show. Yeah, that probably would help some of you guys bring your cars out there, at least defray the expense if you have a nice car.
Maybe not cash, maybe in kind, batteries and motors and so forth. But certainly to have the bragging rights to be the grand show.
Right, we're kind of the best of show or best of
Best
class.
show
yeah.
at EVCON 2012
Right,
would be
right.
a big
deal.
big deal.
Big bragging rights,
I think
absolutely.
So, because we had such nice cars even in 2011.
We did. There's some
So how
beautiful
can we
cars.
get more? I'd like to see 100 cars.
Yeah, it'd be beautiful. 100 cars would be amazing. Yep.
What do I got to do to make it happen?
Well, we might have to offer the guys some incentive.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Well,
think
let's
that
come
would-
up with something.
Okay. Well, we will.
And
I'm sure we'll hear from all our viewers out there.
Well, we're still getting.
What
even
would
though it's
incentivize them?
Just now, the end of 2011, we're starting to get some registrations.
Yeah.
Online for the.
Yeah, they're starting to come back in again. Yeah. Yep.
And so we hope to build quite a event there for that. Any other news you have, or
Let's see what else. did I
Tesla?
have?
Lotus delivered the 2600 Tesla car roller to Tesla, and so that's the end of the line.
That's the end of it. Yeah. Yeah.
When Tesla sells that, they have like some sort of a signature edition of the last 5 or 10 Roadsters.
Oh, that they're going to do. Yeah.
That they're going to
Yeah.
do that. Will be obviously quite collectible.
And even Lotus, I'm not even sure what's going to happen with them because they're owned by a Malaysian car company, I think. And they're not, I don't know. I think they're going to continue to fund them, but they're not too happy that they're not selling a lot of cars.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so I don't know what's
Well,
going to
their
happen to
new
Lotus
model
in general.
is going to be the Esprit,
Yeah.
which was their old
which was
model.
the old model. Yeah.
Yeah, the old model becomes the new model.
Yeah. So Lotus is. I'm not saying their future is uncertain, but the recommendation to the company that owns them, I can't remember the name of
What
the.
was their 2.2, 2+2 that they came out with? We were really hot on it for a while.
The Evora?
Yeah, the Evora.
The Evora. Yeah, we went and looked at that car.
And
yeah.
I really wanted to do an Evora because
Yeah.
it had room in the back for the
Yep.
battery. It was like an Elise, but room in the
A little
back for
like a
battery,
stretch,
little
yeah.
stretch
Yeah.
Elise.
Yeah.
Man, we went out to Denver and was looking at this
Yeah.
car. It looked like an Elise after the pregnancy.
Yeah, it was still really small. I was
carrying
surprised.
a lot in the hips.
Yeah, yeah. Big booty.
It was a matronly looking
That's
Elise. And I said, for that kind of money,
expensive,
and that
yeah.
car, and I think they got up into a different price zone. Those Elises were in the 40s, well equipped.
Uh-huh.
All of a sudden, they were in the 80s.
Yeah. It didn't do it anymore.
I don't think they sold them.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah.
But the Elise is shut down, and that was their good one. And they've delivered the last one to Tesla. Tesla is spotting their betas in their
In their showrooms, yeah, they have nice
and
showrooms.
as we
It was
reported
beautiful.
last week. And
Yep.
but yeah, that's the last Roadster is on its way. You might still be able to pick it up for about 150 grand.
Special
but-
edition Roadster. Let's see, what else did we find out? Was there something about the? Let's see. Oh well, I did want to talk about our friend though. That Chris Payne that came out and spoke at the show.
Yes.
They're still doing theatrical screenings. The movie Revenge of the Electric Car, which I recommend you seeing if it comes to your area. It was a great film. We were really lucky to have it so early. I believe January 24th or so, it's coming out in DVD.
Okay, so we'll be able to buy the DVD.
Yeah, yep. So anybody that didn't get a chance to see it, if it didn't get in a theater near you, I believe they're going to release the DVD the 24th of January.
I think I got on Amazon. They've already got it for pre-purchase.
Do they have a pre-purchase?
And, yeah,
Okay.
I already did the one click, but it won't get here until it's released.
Okay.
And but yeah, it's absolutely a must see. I was very taken. We had Chris as kind of a featured speaker at EVCon 2011, mostly because so many times I heard from people that the original documentary, Who Killed the Electric Car, that's what got him interested.
Kind of got him interested in the
And
electric
so I
car.
thought
Yeah.
he'd be a good, draw for people to come to the show. He actually was very gracious when he got there. I don't know what I expected, but it was a very gracious visit, a nice talk, and then he screened his film
Yeah.
quite, against all
He kind of broke the house rules.
making of sense, and our guys just ate it up, of course.
Yeah, and they liked being called a buzz audience. They knew,
right.
he
And
knew
they-
if he'd show it,
and
they
they-
go out and proselytize.
And they have been
did.
out proselytizing.
Absolutely.
This is the thing these companies have got to learn, is what Chris does. You get a little apostleship out
Yeah.
there waving your flag.
Yep.
It's even A123. They shouldn't be. They've got it all backwards. It isn't that David Andrea burnt down a car with their batteries. They should have 10 people who burnt down cars with their
Yeah, somebody
batteries.
playing with them, doing something.
Right,
That's
and
right.
so they can make the claim of our batteries have burned down more cars than anybody else.
else's.
And
That's
have
right.
we learned a lot, and have they learned a
That's
lot?
right, thank you very
and we're
much.
the most mature technology that's been out there on the road instead of in the lab, and here's our scars to prove it. Yeah, go do your own module and see what happens. It isn't as easy as we make it look.
That's right. Well, in fact, wasn't there
And,
some news about A123 this week?
Yes, A123 now has sort of recalled their 50 battery packs that they have in Fisker.
That's right, in the
for,
Fisker. Yep.
The coolant, just a clamp that's on.
That's all it
backwards.
is. Okay, good.
And and so but it's interesting that Fisker thinks they've delivered 1,000 cars and has told everybody that, and A123 wants 50 of them back that have battery packs.
That were delivered,
in
that actually have battery packs in them?
Did they deliver 950 of them without a battery pack?
I doubt it.
What's going on there?
I know, it's
These
craziness.
guys are just in a fantasy land of why it doesn't have to be this way, guys. You can build a product and people will want it because it's a good product, and you don't have to over tout everything. Just build a better mousetrap and show it, and sell it to who will buy it, not who you want to buy it.
Yeah, especially when you're in a ground floor market and it's a niche product as it is, $100,000 hybrid sports car. Not everybody's gonna want one.
No, they're not. They pin their hopes on it.
Right.
I think Fisker's a walking dead man on the car. I don't think that's gonna work out. He should have stayed with Tesla. Heinrich Fisker got confused between design, which is what he does, as design as art, and actually engineering a car, which is hard. And then you can do some great cars, as we've proven, that are just not economically viable.
Right. They're just
Nobody's going to spend that kind
Who's
of
going to spend the
on
money? Yep, exactly.
And so that's, Fisker's got a car that after about 40 miles, you're doing 20 miles per gallon, like a 54 Dodge Coronet.
Right, which is below
but for $116,000.
Right, below Cafe, and not that great a performance with that engine in.
The CAFE standards were thrown out by a federal court this week.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a commerce clause in our Constitution that sort of prevents states.
Yeah, that was the Interstate
from,
Commerce Clause that they violated. Yeah. At least that judge ruled that.
And
Yeah.
so, well, no.
They got enjoined. It's over, yeah.
The judge ruled correctly.
Yeah, no, he did.
There
yeah.
is a clause. You can't, as a state,
Yeah, make your own.
make your own.
Make
That's
your own
right.
Commerce Clause.
And California very much wants to do this.
Yeah.
And have been encouraged by several administrations to do this. If you want to have CAFE standards like that, you have to do them on a national level. Individual states can't really, and for good reason, set up
Yeah,
their
how would you
own
sell a car
regulation
from
of
another state or
interstate
something?
commerce.
Yeah,
And
yeah, right.
It's
One of the only things holding our union together, I
right,
suppose.
and so that's to prevent having tariffs between states.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So that's actually an interesting area. Although the CAFE standards appear to be driving the OEM interest in the electric cars, just as it did the last time.
Last time to get the
and if they
economy
get the
down.
CAFE standards thwarted, that's going to be the end of the OEM EVs as well.
Yeah, because it would have no incentive to use any product to average that up. Yeah.
The Volt and the Fiat 500 made the Yahoo list.
They made the Yahoo
top
Finance.
losers.
They did.
Top 10 losers
Yeah,
of
they did.
2011.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, there were some other products on there, but I was surprised that they put the
I'm
Volt.
starting to go the other way. I'm going to have a Volt, I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah?
I have belittled this car so long, but it was because of Chevrolet's grandiose claims and arrogance. The hubris is too horrendous to tout an electric car, and along with instructions on where to put the gasoline is to me. Then to announce you're going to sell 110,000 of them the first year, and in the middle of the year announce that you're increasing that to 60,000, and by the end of the year have sold 6,700.
That's right.
But at this point, I'm actually starting to feel sorry for them.
Just want to help them out, see what it's all about.
It's an overly complex car, but everyone that's driving them is having a good experience. Of course, they're not having to repair them yet either. But
Right, that hasn't happened, yeah. Okay.
the big deal, of course, is the A123 cells and batteries. Is what a lot of our viewers are interested in. Let's go and start walking the walk. This is a bit of work and a bit tedious. We have a new version of the module concept.
Yeah, we've been working on that for a while.
And that continues to evolve, and we're going to keep on working on it. And let me show you some. A lot of our viewers want details, so we're going to have
boy,
a
are you in
detailed
trouble.
thing
Get
on
your blanket
how
and
to
your warm
make a
milk.
little-
This might take
some
a while.
metal and plastic,
Or maybe
to
some scotch.
fit together for ourselves. Let's take a look
All right.
at what we're doing with A123 cells. Turns out they're probably worth it. These cells, in some further testing, appear to put out a lot of power from a very small cell, and quite reliably. We're not going to have more range. They're not going to be smaller. They're not going to be lighter. They're not going to be cheaper. But they will pack a punch.
They're powerful, okay.
They're pretty powerful cells. Let's take a look.
All right.
As you know, A123 is kind of losing control of their product line. We ordered some of these cells from China, and we have now received 300 of them at an FOB China price of $20 each. If they were 20 amp hours, that'd be $1 an amp hour, and I'd be very pleased. We're seeing some 19s and some 18 to 19 is where they're coming in. I'm not sure what we're getting. Our first batch, we got these cells from China, A123 systems. This is marked B here, and the USA was actually wiped out, and we had a B marking on the cell. This current shipment of 300 says they're made in USA, and the USA is not blocked out. And in fact, they either have no marking or an A2 in the center. And I can't tell on the test bench really any difference. They're pretty good cells. They are clearly LiFePO 4 cells. If you want to get up over 19 amp hours, you have to charge them up to about 3.8 volts. And that'll give you, after a day's rest, they'll come down to about 3.38, which is pretty fully charged. And I can get 8.5 to 19 amp hours out of them at that point, 2 volts. There's about a half of an amp hour between 2.5 volts, which is where I would cut them off naturally. and the 2 volts that some people are recommending. Their spec sheet doesn't really tell us, and in fact, they won't talk to us. And so these are kind of secret cells. We're finding our own way on them, but we're going to charge these cells routinely to 3.65 volts, just like a Thunder Sky cell, and we're going to discharge it to 2.5 volts, just like a Thunder Sky or a Calb cell. And they are going to give us an option when we get done putting them together into a battery. It's not going to be any smaller than the cells we get, the very excellent prismatic cells we were getting from Thunder Sky or China Aviation Lithium Battery Company. They're not going to be any lighter. In fact, they might be an ounce heavier. And we're going to have to do quite a bit of work to put them together. Why would we do this? This offers us some flexibility that we have not heretofore had, and that is because these cells, as I'll show you in some testing we're going to do later today, will really do up to about 15 C of current out of a single cell. And they'll do that with a voltage sag of about 17%. Now, I count our prismatics as good to 8 to 10 C in power, more 8, and with pretty heroic voltage sag to do that down 22-23%. And so these put out a better power. What does that let us do? Well, for one thing, we could do like a smaller car. And by smaller, I mean a lighter battery pack and less range, but still provide the same current and power to the motor and controller. For example, if we made up these cells, and we're going to put 6 cells in a battery and put that together as a module and strap them together just like we always do. And that'll give us a 100 amp hour cell plus a little bit, which is kind of like buying a 100 amp hour cell. But instead of putting out 800 or 1,000 amps, well, they don't put out that. The 100 amp cell would put out probably 400 or 500 amps, 4 to 5 C. And these will put out 6 of them, potentially 1,800 amps of power. So with a much smaller pack, we can fully operate our motor and controller to whatever it will do. And that gives us an option of doing a 50-mile vehicle, for example, a 40 to 50-mile range, but at full power, and at half of the size of battery pack. We would still be making full power, but it's also half the expense. And so instead of an $8,000 or $9,000 battery pack, you could be in the $4,000 to $5,000 range on your battery pack, have a fully functioning electric vehicle with all the advantages of extended life cycles and lightweight. In fact, much lighter weight, half the weight of what we're doing now, and just have a 40 or 50 mile range car, but it's fully functional. It'll do the full power that the motor controller are capable of, last for 12 to 15 years on the cells, and you're at $4,000 or $5,000 in your battery pack instead of $8,000 or $9,000 that we have to do to be able to get sufficient current to drive our motors and controllers to their full power extent. So this gives us some additional flexibility. Never mind the fact that we can make a very small pack, 20 amp hour, 19 amp hour pack, 48 volts for a bicycle. My goodness, would be 12 of these devices, and it would be a thing this size and weight that could drive a bicycle a number of miles. And so it's a smaller thing. We're going to be exploring, because of the sort of seance that's going on with Winston and Sinopoly and Thunder Sky and some of the battery suppliers. We're going to be looking at some of these options, including the Headways, in coming weeks. In designing a module for these A123s, I've had a lot of thoughts, various neat things you could do, but I can't help but go back to what's inside our original battery cells, and that is a threaded terminal of some weight, and then there's two little bolts and some end plates that clamp hundreds of foils to the terminal block, with the holes in the foils to go through the bolts, and this little plate. And so you have a little plate, a bunch of foils that go to this terminal block, and then some just ordinary nuts, and actually with little washers and lock washers. This is very quaint and kind of antiquated. We would use a Nord-lock or something different than this. But that's what they used, is just some little screws, nuts, lock washers, and washers. And, of course, they used copper for the anode with the copper foils, and aluminum for the aluminum foils, and the aluminum, the cathode terminal. Now, that's important because this is inside a battery with electrolyte. And so you have the galvanic corrosion of dissimilar metals. We're going to be outside the battery, away from the electrolyte. The electrolyte is inside our A123 pouch, and so we don't have the same galvanic problem. And as we've done all along, once we're outside the cell with these, we have copper that is tinned on our terminal lugs, and stainless steel on our bolts, steel with zinc as a sacrificial anode on our thing. And so we have all manner of dissimilar metals once we're outside of the cell. We're already outside of the cell with A123. And so this is what we have put together as essentially the same thing. Being outside of the cell and not having the plastic has posed a problem. We do not want to short one cell into the other, and we need to be able to stack them in the car in very close proximity. And so we've come up with a countersunk high molecular weight polyethylene block for the head of the bolts, and a urethane cast nut, essentially, that is our old friend, the knurled nut insert that we used in our last module design that we're using here. And again, we're going to use two bolts, just as they did, and a tapped hole, just as they did, perhaps not quite as deep, but a full 1/4 inch of tap for our M8 bolt and Nord-lock washer for our terminal. Let me show you some detail as to how we're going to put all that together and manufacture these. Eventually, if this works out, I'm not going to sit here and make these by hand for hundreds of batteries. We'll have some machine shop or something do this in probably better form than I'm doing it. But this will indeed clamp our cells together for now, and that should work. You know, this is my favorite tool, the bandsaw. We've just upgraded it. We use it for everything. It cuts plastics, aluminum, steel, wood, porch decking, just about anything, and we love the bandsaw. We were using a wood bandsaw with a metal bandsaw blade. At the hardware store, they'll tell you a lot about this. It's all bull hockey. Our machine shop guys laughed at us. And the reason is that metal cutting bandsaws run at a much slower speed. Wood cutting bandsaws be 2,000 or 2,400 feet per minute, which is what they talk about. in bandsaws, and you'll want to cut steel at 200 feet per minute, and copper at 400, and aluminum at anywhere from 900 to 1300 feet per minute. Otherwise, you overheat your blade and it melts the teeth, and you have to put in a new blade every week, and we found that was so. Also, in going to a larger bandsaw, we've got 133-inch blade. It goes through more of the machine cooling off between cuts. And so what this is a shop fox that we bought from China, of course, where all good things come from anymore. And it runs 0 to about 1,800 feet per minute. So you can use it for wood. Certainly it's a wood and metal cutting bandsaw, but we got it to have the variable speed to get that speed down. Our tabs are 45 millimeters in width. My first official act here is to measure and get 45 millimeters with this. I'm going to turn this on. We're going to cut a little aluminum, and I've even got a little thing here. It says aluminum is 6 to 14 teeth per inch, 990 to 1980. I turn this on. I'm at 829. We can turn that up a little, 1100 or so. Unlike our Chinese prismatics that have foils, these cells, the foils are 7.5 millimeters thick. 7.5 millimeters is very close to 1/4 of an inch. They're being 25.4, I believe, millimeters per inch. And so we want to space them 1/4 inch apart. I've got here some flat aluminum 3/4 inch by 1/4 stock. And I've set my blade here for this. I'm just going to rip off about 8 of these. Let's shut that off and pull our blank out of here. This is 8 45 millimeter by 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch blanks that we're going to use for spacers in our device. And we'll stack those up. And we're going to use 8 of those to make one cell. This is some 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch ultra high molecular weight polyethylene again. Only this is, we've got this from McMaster Carr as a stick. And I can, using the same length and really the same saw speed, doesn't matter too much with this. It's quite a soft material. Let's rip off a couple of those. These we will drill and countersink to the width of our holes to where the bolts are go through them, but are down in them. And so these will be our insulated bolt head. The bolt will be inside. Bolt head will be inside of here, and you won't be able to get to it without using a test probe. And now what else do we have here? This is an interesting piece. This is a 1.5 inch by 1/4 inch thick piece of aluminum angle iron. And again, we're going to cut off a couple of those at the same saw speed. And this is just a matter of setting this along here. We're not going to get in too much of a hurry. But that just goes right through. And we've got two of these. What are these for? Well, we could take these. They're a 1/4 inch thick, for one thing. Same size as our blanks. But we could drill the holes in them, the same as the blanks, and then tap a hole in the top to carry a ordinary M8 terminal bolt, just as we use in our current cells. And this would work fine. This would stand it up off of our battery cells where that bolt could go down through there and give us plenty of room for a thread, nice flat surface to mate to, and there we'd be. Let's take our blanks and go to the drill press for a moment. Okay, this is kind of interesting. Rod made me a little jig out of steel, and this is the width of our blanks. And we originally had a couple of holes here to drill through. We're down to pretty much using just the back ones, and I'm going to load 3 of them in there. We'll use this jig to go down through and drill through the 3, and then I'm just going to pull these out and flip them and put them back in and drill them the same way. Why are we doing this? I don't really have vertical mill machine, a CNC, and we need to be somewhat exact. The drill press has kind of got some wobble in it. But with this steel jig, this will let me get these holes, if I measure carefully my width, to be at about the same place on each of the aluminum spacers. We can then use those to do our holes in the polyethylene block and the angle iron and get them all to more or less match up. Now our bolts are going to be a number 10, but I'm using a 5/16 drill bit here, and that'll make a hole a little bit bigger. That makes it a little easier to assemble. We don't care too much if they're out of align this way, but we want it to be able to clamp very easily and to be easy to assemble. And so I've got them in the jig. And we come down through it. That's kind of the same situation as the bandsaw. The slower you can get your drill to turn, the less dulling and melting of the tips will happen. And it'll go through the metal pretty good anyway. So we run that through. And about 3 is all we can do because of the chaff. And we pull them directly out of there. I'm going to knock out my aluminum cuttings. We're going to take them and flip them straight over and stick them back in there. All the way. Flip this over and do it a little more. It's not too precision, but it's cheap, and it lets us make our spacers with the holes in essentially the same position on each one. I've taken our piece of 1/4 inch aluminum and put it in the vise, and I've got one of our little tabs with the holes in it, the spacers, and I'm going to line that up along the bottom of it. Take my little green marker and just poke me a dot in the middle of each of those. And I'm then going to take a center punch and a hammer and see if I can knock my aluminum out of my vise. Let's tighten that down a little bit more. And that gives me a little start hole on each of those dots. I do not seem to be able to get this vise tightened down enough. 1/4-inch drill. I'm going to drill a hole. That gives me 2 holes that are perfectly aligned, more or less perfectly aligned, with my spacer tab, which will be at the bottom there of that, and my clamp bolts will go through the 2 of them, and I could have a tab on each side of each of them, and that's where we're going with that. Now we're going to take our aluminum angle and rotate it to where we have another little element here, and I'm going to measure with my square, which is right here. So I'm taking my little square here, and I'm going to mark in about 3/4 of an inch, trying to find the center here of our thing. And that will let me roll in that way. And then we'll go do the same operation here to find the center. We're going to tap us the start hole there. Again, we got to get this fixed in here pretty good. This is the drill for a M8 tap, and we're going to drill us a hole here. It's a little bit smaller. That gives us a perfect size hole for an M8 tap. M8, if you recall, we use a stainless 316 stainless M8 bolt that has 1.25 threads per inch and is 16 millimeters long on all our batteries. And we're just going to fix this up where it uses the same ones. And I've drilled the appropriate hole. And now using my CNC tap machine, oh wait, here's just a manual one we'll do today. We're going to simply tap us a hole there for our M8 bolt, where we'll put the M8 bolt and the Nordlock washer. And this 1/4-inch angle iron is not only of sufficient thickness to be similar, not exact, but similar to our 1/4-inch blanks, but it's enough to give us a little bit of a thread. Aluminum's not great at holding threads, but 1/4-inch of aluminum will give us a pretty good thread. into this. And we always later, if we had to, could go to a oversized bolt and rethread it if it got stripped out. But that's basically what our terminals are now in the prismatics, are either aluminum or copper, and really no more thread than this 1/4 inch will provide. And so this will serve as our actual terminal, with our 2 bolts going through here and our terminal bolt going through the top. And that's how we make our aluminum angle. Our next procedure is our little high molecular weight polyethylene bolt head block that we just simply want to put a hole through and then a countersink. So I'm going to put our little spacer tab on here. I can just hold this. This stuff drills pretty easily, and I can use a very slow speed drill to just drill through this plastic, holding this in place, and then I can go do the other one without moving anything. And that goes straight through, and I've got my 2 holes for my bolts lined up pretty good with my 2 holes in my spacer. Now what I have yet to do is kind of a tricky little operation, and that is, let's take a 1/2 inch bit and put it in my drill, and not that drill. I'm going to have a bigger drill here for the 1/2 inch bit. Let's put that there. And I'm going to center that on the hole I just drilled, and very slowly, and I'm going to let let it eat. When I get about 1 inch, I'm just going to pull it straight up, and that will pull that out. And so I like a curl about like that, and pull it up, and those will pull right out. And what we wind up with then is a countersunk piece of plastic that our bolt can go through, that will hold our bolt, but will give it some space where anything flat against this is not going to be able to touch the bolt head. And so this will be our insulator for the bolt heads. Aside from the bandsaw, my favorite tool is the grinder. I actually don't do very much grinding, but I do a lot of wire wheeling. Let's see if we can get some squall going on. That's probably a little bit much. I'm going to show you our blanks. What we're going to do is take the fuzz off of them, and you can see kind of the manufacturing marks. If you recall, we took a piece of sandpaper and knock the oxidation off of our terminals. We're going to have to do the same thing. This aluminum almost immediately takes on an oxide that is actually a pretty good insulator. And I'm going to have to knock off the edges here somewhat on the grinder part. But mostly we're going to use a wire wheel to remove the corrosion. And the corrosion is the thing that's going to cause heat and bad connections in our module. And if we can get this shiny and bright and get it clamped securely to those tabs, we're really not going to have a heat problem. And by the way, 123 has recalled 50 of their battery packs that are going to Fisker with a coolant problem. We're not going to have liquid coolant, so Chevy and Fisker can deal with that as they might. But I want to point out that they've made 1,000 Fiskers, and they've delivered 1,000 Fiskers. But apparently the first 50, which is all that have had batteries, have been recalled. And so there is nobody in this OEM game that doesn't lie. It's incredible. But anyway, we're not going to have liquid coolant, but we are going to brighten all our pieces and give it a wire wheel action. Now that's not going to make it perfectly flat. It'll have a little texture to it, but it will remove all the oxidation. And that's the important part. And so that's what we're going to do with our little device. I do have my Commander Cody radar men from the moon glasses, and while I'm somewhat cavalier about that around power tools, I'm not really around the buffer, and that reason is the buffer just throws a lot of stuff, most notably the wires from the wheel itself, and they can hurt if you get one in the eye. I actually haven't had that happen, but I've gone home with my shirt so full of them and stuck into my chest that I get a rash, and so I know they'll hurt if you did get one in the eye. So here we go. I always use a pair of pliers or something to help me hold the piece of aluminum. And we're just knocking off stuff here. Any hanging chads around our hole. But more importantly, we want to knock off that finish on the face of that. And I also like to take off any sharp corners from the edge from the bandsaw cutting, just so they don't cut me when I'm handling them. And that's a pretty shiny surface there. We're going to do the same thing, only more so, to our aluminum terminal, and that is going to get more of the treatment, but for the same reasons. A lot of times you'll have a little lip around something you drilled. A lot of people grind those off. That sort of leaves some pits and stuff that really is undesirable in a terminal. And I found that the wire wheel mostly can knock all that off anyway. We're going to take off our edge. And flip that over and do the inside just as well as the outside. And so there's our nice and bright aluminum angle. For our module. So you want to deburr all this so it doesn't get you in the fingers, but the most important part is to deoxidize that finish. And you want to do this, if you make a bunch of these ahead of time, hit them a light lick on the wire wheel again right before you assemble it, because that will remove any oxidation that builds up on there. Aluminum it's oxidizing now as we speak, and if it builds up enough, it's enough of an insulation that electrolytic capacitors, that is the dielectric, is aluminum oxide. So it's not a conductor. And so this oxidation is a big thing. You can't see any of it. Aluminum rusts no color. If you polish aluminum planes, you wind up with a black rag. That's how you can tell aluminum oxide is black. But it's at such a microscopic level that you can't tell until you remove it and the aluminum's left bright, that you have done any of that. And so that's our buffing wheel assignment. Okay, the next part of our little module here on my messy bench is our fastener, or retainer. We want to be able to retain our bolt And I liked what we did before. This is our little nut that we embedded in the urethane resin before, and it worked very well. We did it upside down to where it would pull against the cone of the nut to do that. And we're going to use these to do our clamp for the A123 module. What I've done is created a little mold here by taking one of our little metal pieces and marking holes in and through the actual holes in the spacer and drilling the holes in this high molecular weight polyurethane, which main feature again, just like our mold before, is that nothing sticks to it, including the urethane. And then I've taken this and sort of drilled it onto there, screwed them down upside down. And I've used 2 layers of the polyethylene here, and just put some modeling clay on each end to cap it off. And I will pour our resin into this up just over the base plate of the nutsert, or the threaded insert that we're burying in this non-conductive high temperature urethane. The urethane takes some care in preparation. The mold is where you spend most of your time, and I've got 2 strips of the high molecular weight polyurethane, polyethylene screwed down here. High molecular weight polyethylene is Tyvar is the brand name, and virtually we can't get anything to stick to it, any kind of epoxy or anything. And so I've taken to using it as forms to cast epoxy and urethanes because they simply do not stick to it. So what we'll do, we've got our threaded inserts mounted in here with screws. We will now mix the urethane and pour it in here, and wait for it to set up. And then we simply take the screws out, and the urethane should be above this base area to where one side of our retainer is non-conductive and the other side is threaded about 6 millimeters through to give us a little latitude with our mounting screws. And so that's what we're going to do. It doesn't take very much of this. I'm going to put about 3 ounces of our what they call side A, RP40. This is Daskar Plastics RP40. It's a 1x1. It has a 2-minute work time and a demold time of 15 minutes. This stuff's pretty hot, but it makes kind of a thing I really like. It's kind of an ivory color, hard, heat resistant, and the whole thing sets up. But you have to be, particularly in these small quantities, very careful. So I've got a measuring cup here where I can put, exactly 3 ounces of part A, side A, and then we will fill it up to 6 ounces with side B. Whoops, do I have 3 or 4 ounces? I've got 4 ounces in there. You have to be careful of this. These need to have the right thing. So I'm going to have to fill this up to 8 ounces. I meant to put 3. The eyes just aren't what they were. And there is 8. And I've got 2 minutes to mix this up and get it in the form. I'm just using a regular paint stirrer in here. And I'm going to stir it pretty good. You want this to really be mixed. And so I'm going to give it about 30 seconds of a pretty good stir. It gets hot in up to about 170 degrees Fahrenheit when you're dealing with this. And that's mixed up pretty good. And I'm going to start pouring because we don't have much time here. We're going to pour this up to where my whole slot is full. And in fact, I want it kind of running over. We can always trim off a little extra, but we're wanting to be past this area of our nutsert, and we are up the screw here a little bit all the way across. We're a little bit out of level. Let's raise the end here just a hair, and that is gonna, and now we give it 15 minutes to set up. We will leave this. In fact, what I'm going to do while we're here, just for grins with my excess, I am going to put a 5/16" bolt right in the middle of it, sticking up out of it. And I'm going to try, as this sets up, to pull that bolt just a little bit to where it's not really sitting on the bottom. I guess if I had something that was plastic, that would work as well, something to set it on. But what I'm going to do, this is going to harden into a resin that is non-conductive. And so we'll just make us a little post here that we can use. And it's already starting to take on a color, so I'm just going to hold this here for a second, see if it'll come together around this bolt. And we will have a post on a circle of urethane that we can pull this out of our cup and reuse our cup. More importantly, we could use this for a voltage post or something to have a 12-volt tie or something. The bolt's kind of holding its own. Let me try to get it coming up straight. And let's see if that will set up around it. As you can see in our mold, we're starting to take on a little color there. It'll happen first in our cup because that's where the largest body of it is. And it takes a little bit of this to have a little bit of body. I'm just going to lay this on top where it'll dry off the bench and not stick to it. This stuff is pretty good about popping from other things. We haven't had to wax or use release agents, particularly with the high molecular weight polyethylene. So that's going to be a bar of our fasteners that are non-conductive. Alrighty then, we've kind of set up a little bit, not entirely, but we can go ahead and start removing our screws. I've got my little drill here and we just start backing them out. If they get a little stiff, I've got a regular screwdriver, and some of them have the material on them, and they're going to be a little sticky until you get them backed out. But we're going to pull all the screws, leaving, of course, our nutsert buried in the material. There's one. Problem is, I have a lot of them, but in this way, I can do one pour, and you can see I wasted quite a bit of material by hitting 4 ounces instead of 3. There's no way to get it back in the jar. Once it's mixed up, it's gonna set up. And but in one pour, probably even 2 ounces of each in this case would have filled this form, and we'll learn more as we do more of them, and we can use our form over and over simply by putting the screws back in with more of the little nutserts that we put in there. And so this is just a matter of pulling all the screws and waiting for our 15 minutes of fame here to set up. And at that point, we'll have a bar of this that we'll have to saw with our bandsaw into a series of retainers. And why am I showing you all this? Well, we're trying to come up with a way for the A123 modules. But this is some relatively inexpensive fabrication. And a lot of times it comes up that you need something that's relatively non-conductive. And I love these little resins. They're not inexpensive. This will cost up to $100 for a couple of bottles, but we use it over and over for all sorts of things. And it works fine, lasts a long time. So it's actually relatively inexpensive, and you can form parts. And what you get into with EVs, and certainly with batteries, is you have to do it repetitively. And this lets you cast a bunch at one time and then separate them. And so you'll have them. And I actually find it faster and easier to use your CNC stuff to make the form and to produce the parts. It's less expensive, actually quicker, and easier to simply cast them out of some of the available epoxies and urethanes that are out there. The tedious part about this is putting the nutserts in, and we could cut threads in some materials, but there are very few non-conductive materials that will hold a thread to the degree that steel will. And keep in mind, in order for this battery module to function well, we have to clamp those tabs with a pretty good amount of force, or you're going to have some cells contributing more current than others, and that's going to lead to problems, heat spots, resistance, and it's just not going to be a good battery. We need to clamp those pretty strongly. We're stepping down at this point. I was going to use a 1/4 inch bolts. We're stepping down to a number 10 to try to save some weight and space. But we're still going to have two of them, two threaded bolts to hold this together across 6 sets of tabs. I think will be pretty strong. Probably overbuilt a little bit, but overkill is generally appropriate, if not always. All right, we're down to our last couple of screws here, and we will pull those out. That sort of leaves our thing. Let's see how our stuff is doing in the cup. I'm going to take a wrench, put it on my bolt, and it's it's not too slimy. We have a little film of the thin stuff here, and we can tear that off. And here's my little bolt in an insulated thing. I could glue that to a car and use it as a post to hang things on. It's still a little tender. I think we're going to give it a minute before we break our bar out of here. But we're pretty much ready. Okay, we've got our screws out that we're retaining this. I'm going to pull my little plug off the end of clay, and that looks pretty good. See if I can get a screwdriver under here. Which I can't. Let's try the other end then. Got my clay out. Again, I can't do much. Why don't we pull one side of our mold, which is also held with some screws. See how that comes out. And that should free my mold. Let's see if we can pull it out. And yeah, it comes away. Not terribly easily, but it does. And we are left with our stuff in there that does not seem to want to come loose. There it comes. That high molecular weight really won't let anything stick to it very well. So we'll just kind of walk down through here, loosening this as we go. And it should pop out. And here is our little nutserts. Sticking out one side, and out the other side, nothing really. We'll take this to the buffer and kind of grind off these metal pieces and trim up the edges, and we'll be fine. Assembly of our module is pretty straightforward. This is our retainer, our terminal, our bolt block, and our spacers. We will stick our two bolts through our bolt block, which, as we can see, are recessed but retained. Let's stick them through our two holes in our terminal, stack our 4 spacers, on here, and we can put our little retaining nut thing here, tighten them down. These are some 1 3/4 inch stainless screws, number 10, 24 threads to the inch. McMaster car again. I like using this stainless so they don't corrode as badly. They're a little harder. The heads are a little harder. They don't strip out as bad. And there is our little module terminal. And we would have one tab between the polyethylene block and the spacer, one between the terminal and the first spacer. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our last one goes between our urethane and the spacer, and we tighten them all down because we're only spanning this group of elements here. With 2 screws, we can get quite a bit of clamping force on those tabs, and we'll be good to go. And let me show you what a battery looks like made out of these. This is the last battery that I made. It's 24 cells. It's a little bit of disarray up here because our machining is not very close. So it looks a little haphazard. It's actually quite strong. We get very good conductivity to each and every cell in it. And we're very pleased with the outcome. Best, we can mount these side by side or end to end as we have them here with the same flexibility that we normally have with the prismatics. It's a little bit larger, each of these, than the 100 amp prismatic. It's a little taller, not quite as thick, and a little bit wider. I put a little foam in between each of them. I've got them lashed up with this. We would normally have this down in a box, and we're even talking about pouring some of our urethane into the box to make it a very solid module. But right now we've got it where we can swap and trade with our friends individual cells with 6, 18, 19 amp hour cells. We're at a good 110 or 115 amp hours, and of course 3.35 volts per cell, with the ability to put out this little package here. As best I can tell, we've done 320 amps out of a 20 amp hour cell in real time, 17% sag on the voltage, and so that would be 16 C, and so this would do about 1600 to 1700 amperes continuously out of this pack, which will drive just about anything, including our Escalade. We would not have had to have the 400 amp hour cells had we been able to put out this much power. Of course, we do want some range with the Escalade. Since assembling this, I've made a change in our module. Can you tell what it is? Our position. I want our terminal to cover a little bit more of our device. All of our blocks here will be under cover basically, and this will be the terminal. And I want a little more bite for my bolts, and so we're using now a 1/4 inch 1.5 angle instead of a 1 inch 3/16. And that larger angle is going to make things a little bulkier, a little heavier, but I think will make our terminal straps and so forth much. I've had to double up the straps because my bolts were too long here in a couple of cases, and then not in the other ones. About the only thing, and that's pretty much our module design. We've gotten out of the module and gone back to a clamp very similar to what's inside our current prismatics. It's larger because our foils are larger and our foils are thicker. These are 7.5 millimeters thick, and so we have to space it where they don't bunch together too badly at the top and get good metal on metal contact without shorting one cell to the next. And so we have our threaded inserts in urethane on one end and a recessed bolt block on the other that allows for easy assembly and still good clamping contact between the two. And that's really sort of the mission. And so that's what we've got going on there. That's our latest module thinking. again, I'd like to have a contest or something to come up with some better thinking. This looks pretty crude to me. It's certainly no improvement on what they are doing in the prismatics. I've got to believe there's a way to do something really in advance on this. I think you can get too tricky by half. I'm intentionally going back to simpler, keep it simple, stupid, and that's in order to keep the price, weight, and doability into a realm we can deal with. I think this will work, but again, a packaging design engineer, I'm not. I think even A123 has gone overboard on their design. The little clips, all the little plastic pieces, the heat sinking, and the I don't really think it's necessary with these cells. There is some temperature at very high currents, but it dissipates very quickly. I've got quite a bit of metal up here to suck it away, and so that's what we might do if it is an issue, is put 3 aluminum plates that come up and terminate in a foot on the bottom of this to wick away heat toward the bottom. That's a little bit of a problem in that heat wants to rise, and so I'm not sure what that'll do, but a liquid cooling system, too complicated, probably not needed with these cells if sized properly. How about the BMS thing? Do you really want me to get started on this? Our module and our cells have a certain cost. We can double that cost with a cutting BMS design and probably burn your car down in a process. Of course, I'd love to know what's going on inside each and every cell in the thing, but it's not necessary. We've learned the hard way that these LifeProof 4 cells, really, the less we mess with them, the better off we are. And these, in testing, I can see they're smaller, but they're very much lithium iron phosphate cell. And just like the prismatics. So I'm becoming more comfortable with them. I think they'll make a great car battery. It has some problems just mechanically and in connecting them. A little bit more work. Every bit as much expense. They're no lighter. They're no smaller. But they do offer us some advantages in what we can do with our cells. And so let's take a look at how I piece this together, just if you want some detail about how to make it, and you'll see ways to certainly do that better than we do in our we don't really have a machine shop. We've got a couple of power tools and some hammers, then with drills where we can do this sort of thing. But I think this is we're kind of on the right track. I liked our original module, but I think it's overkill. I think these will be more flexible and easier to put in a car.
NetGain Controls introduces the new Warp Drive Industrial Controller. The Industrial is designed to handle a maximum of 1400 amps and up to a 360 volt nominal battery pack. The unit's rugged design looks and works great in the automotive environment while protecting it from the elements. In addition to higher continuous currents than the classic Warp Drive controller, the Industrial comes with several major enhancements. Liquid cooling is available and uses leak-free and rugged AN fittings. The Industrial controller has complete isolation on both throttle channels, giving the highest possible immunity from situations that might affect the electrical throttle input. High voltage connections are fully protected underneath the sealed cover. Voltage leaks between vehicle chassis and a battery pack are detected, alerting the user to potential safety problems. Controller settings can be completely customized using the NetGain Controls interface module, which can also log data to an onboard SD card. The controller weighs in at 25 pounds. Visit www.ngcontrols.com to order your Warp Drive Industrial Controller now.
Okay, we're here with our A123 cells. I have the A123 spec sheet, and it has a very interesting thing on it. We're going to talk about the power output of these cells, which is its main advantage. the way I see it. They list the discharge power nominal in watts as 1200 watts from one of these M1 HD-A cells. It also lists the nominal voltage as 3.3. We can take 1200 watts nominal power, and we can divide that by our nominal voltage of 3.3. We get 360 amperes. Now, is it possible that a 20 ampere cell can put out a 360 amps of current? That would be dividing by 20, 18C. Now, you'll hear people talk about these cells, 20C, 100C. This is nonsense. But 18C is possible, and we could even see 20C in theory. What we want to see is this 18C listed in the spec of 360 amps, and I want to measure the voltage across these cells when it's delivering that. Our test setup, we have a little laptop here with a that's hooked up to a Bruce Sherry design state of charge meter that lets me check current and voltage. Here's 1V period. Well, that gets me something else. 1C is my current. 1V is 10.46 volts. I'm showing 10.45, so that's pretty good on my meter. This is our little Kubler. It's hooked up to a shunt to give us amp hour counting, and we want to watch that fairly carefully. I've got 3 of the cells in series. Now, this is kind of a test setup. Doing 300 or 400 amps in a test setup is non-trivial in any kind of constant current fashion, and so we don't have the capacity to do 3,000 amps at 10 volts. That's 30,000 watts, and we simply don't have that kind of test equipment. So we're going to do this test on a series of single cells, and we're going to use 3 of them about 10 volts. That gets us up to where the resistances of our connections to our constant current source don't really matter. This is a little switching power supply that puts out 12 volts, and I've got it hooked up to a contactor back here, and this contactor connects this to it. Again, we're using heavy 2-aught cables to metal connections to the cells, and getting all that strapped up is kind of non-trivial, and we may burn something up in trying to do 300 or 400 amps. I've got a little fluke meter here I can use as a backup to take a current reading with. So we'll have our voltage over here, our amp hours, and our amp hours here. But the big thing we want to check is current. And these are our loads. This one will do about 300 amps. This one will do, I want 10 volts. It's 1500 watts. It'll do about 150 amps. And so we can probably do pretty close to 400 amps with these 2 in parallel. I'm going to have a 2-camera setup where you can kind of see the meter. The important part here is that we watch this voltage really more than anything, and we'll see our voltage as we read our current off of here. And so we've got these cells pretty much fully charged. I'm going to turn this on. We're going to first record our voltage. If we only had a pin. Cut. Okay, we've got a pin. We're going to first record our voltage. It's 10.44 volts, and that's at no current. And what I'd like to do is get us about 10 amps current coming out of here, and we'll check that and go from there. And so I'm going to turn on our contactor. Got 2.1 amps here. We are at 10 amps here on our Acme, 0 on our transistor devices. And that is bringing our voltage down to 10 I've got about 10.70 and falling for the 3 cells. And let's crank this up, let's say to 100 amps here on our thing. And we're at 100 amps. And we're at 8.95 volts there. And now we're going to crank this one up. And I've got 100 amps on that, 100 amps on this. We're at 201 amps there shown. 200. I'm showing 8.08 volts. And let's crank this up to 200 here. And that gives me about 300 volts there, and I'm at 7.36 at 300 amps. That's looking pretty good. And we said, so at 360, let's crank this up to 260 here. And that's supposed to be the maximum. And we are falling off here. And our voltage is at 6.3. And so I'm going to shut that off. 6.3 volts at 360 amps. And what I'm seeing is an incredible amount of power there. Let's see what we did amp hour wise. That took 6.32 amp hours out of there. And so 20 amp hour cell, we still have some pretty good capacity left. We're going to let it rest a little bit, and this voltage come back up. It's at 9.82 and climbing. I'm going to let it climb back up to 10 volts. And if you notice, that was a fairly constant test. So we're at 93 degrees Fahrenheit or so forth on these. Let's kick it on. And we get a little squeal from our contactor. 361, 364. And I'm at 7.8 volts and dropping like a stone. 360. When we get to 2.0 volts, or 6 volts for the two of them, but we're doing this for 8 or 10 seconds, and this thing seems to be doing fine. We've just run off 3.5 amp hours out of this at 360 amps, and had a drop in voltage to initially to 7.80. It was taking it on down. But at about 10 seconds, we had about 7.8 volts. That's 9.91 minus 7.8 is 2.11 divided by 9.91. That's a 21% drop, which is very analogous to what we see, 21, 22%, with our prismatic cells. 21 or 22%, but that is a full 18C or 360 amps. Now what would that mean if we make our module out of 6 of these? We'll have a little 110 amp hour device, but it would be capable of putting out 2,160 amperes with a 21% drop in voltage. And that's heroic. We use our 180 amp hour Calb cells, and we can get 1,000 amps out of that pretty comfortably with a 22 or 23% drop. But a 100 amp hour Calb cell is not going to do that. It might do, I think we're using 100 amp Calb cells on this buggy that we're doing for Lee Moorhead, and I believe it'll put out the 650 amps briefly that he might ever use. But at 1,500 pounds, if he uses 650 amps and 125 volts very long, he's going to wind up at the speed of sound. And so I don't think that's going to come up very much for that vehicle. And so I would say between 5.5 and 6.5 C is very common for the 100 amp hour cells. But in this case, these can clearly do 18C. I'm back up at 9.862. Let's crank it again and get us a temperature. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 seconds, 360. Got 100 degrees there, 123, 121. Center cell is at 124. We're still doing 360 volts. We're up to 139. So in 10 seconds, we can see 140 degrees Fahrenheit on these cells. We don't even have a temperature problem at 18C. This is 140 degrees C isn't even going to harm a lithium iron phosphate cell. They'll start having some problems at about 170 degrees Fahrenheit with some of the electrolytes, but this is not even an issue for 140 degrees for these cells. I am at 14 amp hours. I'm going to turn on my charger a little bit. We're going to recharge the cell just a minute, and then we're going to see how high we can get these given the test equipment that we've got. It will do its claim of 1,200 watts, 360 amps. We've kind of proven that. And so this is a very impressive cell. We're probably going to have to take a look at some further work with the A123 cells simply because of its high power output. All right, we're back to 2.92 amp hours. So we've pretty much recharged our cell at 100 amps. Interesting thing about that, these aluminum plates, if I put my thermal gun right on a terminal, we'll see 94. But right in the middle of the plate, it's 71 degrees. This big plate is particularly strange. We're probably only, the terminals, just even that cell just isn't getting warm because that plate is wicking off the temperature. So we get kind of a high temperature on these cells, but there's really not that much heat power in them. And if you can get it wicked off with a little bit of metal, here's a terminal at 83 and the middle of the plate is at 70. And so a little bit of aluminum is wicking off that temperature pretty nicely. We're going to turn it on, and I'm going to put on a pair of glasses here. They're not really safety glasses, but I'm going to turn this on just in case. And we're at 360. I'm going to turn this one up until that one starts to drop. My gosh, I am at 187, 190. Here is 201. That's 461 amps. And that's about what we can do with our equipment, is 461. We're down at 7.7 volts, but we just did a pulse for 6 or 8 or 10 seconds of 461 amps. And that's almost hard to believe. I'm going to repeat this. Let's turn this on. But I'm going to measure it over here on my fluke. And what I see is 460 amps and falling to 452 as our voltage comes down. Let's turn this off. I've got this set up pretty good. We'll put this on our other camera here so you can see it, the voltage and the current at the same time. And I'm going to zero this out at 1.1 amps. We're up to 9.7 volts. And let's just fire this up and see if you can see this. There is 475 amps. We're dropping to 460 at 7.8 volts, 450 amps. And so that thing will do, that single cell will do 470 amps, it looks like, which would be for a brief period. That's 23.5 C. So the concept that this cell can do 20 C is, as they say on Mythbusters, this one's confirmed. This cell can put out a tremendous amount of power for a brief period and not even get particularly warm. Well, we got 150 degrees here. We get 150 degrees Fahrenheit when we put it up to 450 amperes. And that's really the same. 165, we're at 168 is my highest reading there at 450 amps. And so I'm going to shut this down. Just that test at that high rate got us, we burned up half of the cell right there, 11 amp hours. We were about 2 amp hours light, so that's about 9 amp hours. 9.9 amp hours is what we took out of that just in those tests. But amazing amounts of power out of these cells. Next thing we're going to take a look at is kind of an average capacity. Okay, we've just watched a single cell series of 3 cells put out 470 amperes at about 7.5 volts. That's 3,500 watts. You can run a house on 3,500 watts. Now that little string of single cells wouldn't do it very long, but if we paralleled some, it might. In this case, instead of having 3 in series, we have 4 in series for basically a 12-volt battery. We're going to charge this using a power supply here to 14.6 volts and kind of try to hold it there. I'm at 36 amps. And that's 3.65 volts times 4 would be 14.6. As you can see, I'm at 14.57 here. And 35 amperes there. I can put the fluke on it and confirm our current fairly easily. And indeed, we have about, well, it's saying 20 amps, 19 amps DC. There we go. 29.4. We're showing 30 on our power supply. That's about right. So we're at 28 amps, 14.6 volts. And as you can see, our current is coming down. We're trying to hold our voltage. Our power supply isn't real good at that. I have to reach over and nudge it down a little bit every once in a while. But there we are at 20 amps and 14.57. So we'll bring this to 14.6 volts and down to about 0.5 amps, and that's going to be 0.05 C, which we know from lithium iron phosphate cells is pretty fully charged. And so that'll result in a fairly high level of state of charge across the 4 cells, and we'll then test our capacity using our load at the book rate of 0.5 C. All right, we've got our 4-cylinder unit here. This is 6 cells in each of 4 lined up, giving us right now 14.37 volts. Now that'll go down over time, but not for several hours. We've removed the charger, and a fully charged lithium iron phosphate cell is 3.4. And so our battery really can't be above, in this case, 13.6 volts. But it'll do this for several hours as the charge is dissipated, the surface charge dissipates. You have to wait 12 or 15 hours sometimes to get a true reading. And that would probably be as full as these are, probably in the 3.36 or 3.37 volts per cell, or about 13.48 volts. And that'll be a fully charged cell after the surface charge takes off. We don't care about that right now. We have reset our amp hour counter here. We have reset our amp hour counter here, and we want to count amp hours and monitor this voltage. And we're going to take it down to 8 volts, I guess, 2 volts per cell, and see what goes on here. We've got to set up a little bit of load, and I'm having a little difficulty with that one. Let's turn this on. Sometimes you feel like a load, sometimes you're not. Let's crank this up here. We'll turn this one off. And if I set this for right at 59 on here, I think what we'll find is, here we go, 61.4. Let's shut this off and re-zero this. And then when I turn this on, I can adjust this for exactly 60 amps. It's a little touchy. There is 60 amps. This is nominally a 120 amp hour battery. And so we're going to do it at a 0.5 rate, or 60 amperes. And we're going to start counting our amp hours. We have 1.07 there. Now there is a little disparity here. There's 1.17. It doesn't show up yet, but as we go through this, we're using 2 different shunts and 2 different devices to give me an amp hour count. They'll be a percent off, and so on 100 amps, that'll be an amp hour and a half. That they'll be separate. But we're going to monitor this until this is down to about, we'll do 10 volts at 2.5 volts and see how many amp hours we've had. And then we'll take it down to 8 volts, which would be 2 volts per cell, and see where we're at on that. And that should give us a pretty fair indication of what our capacity is. It should be 120 amp hours if it's if we have 20 amp hours per cell. Now this is going to average them pretty nicely. When we put 6 in parallel like this, there's no, this is just like our prismatic cells, adding more foils. They're all in parallel. Our battery is 120 amp hours or 110 amp hours, whatever it is the average of those 6 cells that we put together, and that is the size of it. I think one of the advantages we may have with this kind of battery is taking 6 of them of similar manufacture. We're going to average that out, and I think we'll find that the difference in capacity from one of these cells to the next serially is going to be less because of this random combination of those 20 amp hour cells. Of course, the nature of chaos theory, it could also go the other way, so you know. But I think it'll probably be an advantage in building packs for cars, and we're looking for a little bit of gain there. So we'll see what we get. We'll check back. This is going to take about at 0.5 C rate. It'll take 2 hours to discharge these cells, and we'll see where we're at then. All right, we're at 11.73 volts here on our multimeter on our pack that we're bleeding at 60 amp hours constant current load. And our Bruce Sherry design state of charge head has got us at 106.07 amp hours. We're showing 102 on the Kubler. Now the Kubler's got like a 1200 amp shunt, so it's not going to be as accurate as the this will do much better in an Escalade, but right now we need a little better accuracy. So we're at 11.6 volts, 106 amp hours. Here's our latest version of the module. We're testing this one, put together as a 12 volt pack. It's quite a bit taller, about 11 inch tall, instead of 9.5 for 100 amp hour cell. 6.5 inches across instead of 5.5 inches. These are about 2.5 inches thick as opposed to 2.75. We've gained nothing on volume. If anything, we've lost, and probably nothing on weight. However, these do quite a bit more power. Here's the latest version that I showed you earlier using the larger aluminum 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch angle, and our urethane fasteners and our recess blocks in high molecular weight polyethylene, and the rest of it's simply 1/4 inch by 3/4 stock, cut 45 millimeters long to be the same width as the tabs. And this is threaded at the top for our M8 bolt and our Nordlock washer, just like we do all of our prismatic cells. And I think returning to basically the prismatic cell format, I can put a plastic case around this. Probably won't, as we'll put them in our metal boxes and arrange them that way. And we may put a plastic liner on the whole box. I'm at 11.25 volts, and let's take a look here. 108.59 amp hours. My experience with these cells has been about 109 3/4, 110 to 2.5 volts piece. But we're holding up pretty good at 11.18. Even our Kubler is showing 105. So we're going to have a module that's over 100 amp hours, probably not 120 amp hours, but somewhere around 110, using 6 of these cells. We had ordered 300 of the cells. I'd already had about 50 of them, but if we put 24 in a 12 volt battery, about 240 of them, we'd have 120 volts. We could do a speedster out of those 300 pretty easily, and maybe we'll do that. It'd be certainly a lighter weight speedster. These are about a half a kilogram a piece. And so you're looking at 12 kilograms here times 10 would be 120 kilogram. Might do 11 for really 10 would be over 130 volts. And so that would be 120 kilograms or 250 pounds instead of the 450 pounds of cells we have in the car. You know, that would be at some savings in cost and weight at sacrificing range, but it would still drive well. We're at 10.76 volts. Let me update us, 110.52 amp hours. This is all acting pretty predictably. And so we'll take it down to 10 volts and call it that. That's going to be adequate. I'm not going to run these cells to 2 volts ever in a car. I would not take them below 2.5 at 0.5 C is probably about there. That's going to be about 3 volts static per cell. One cell right now, we're looking at 2.89 there. The other end is 2.88. So we've got them pretty well balanced. And we're at 10.41, 10.39. And it'll go down pretty smartly after that. After 10 volts. Put this down. There we see 61 amps, 10.12 volts. And the more flattering display is the Bruce Sherry Designs. We're at 112.36 on this battery, and that's not too bad. And there's our 10 volts. And we're at 112.70. If we divide that by 6, we get 18.78 amp hours. Let's turn it back on, take her down to 8 volts just to thrill you all. We're at 8.9 volts. Next week, I think, this works out 114. Yeah, that's 19 amp hours, and we're falling 8.4, 8.3, and falling pretty quick now. 8.2, 8.1, and there's 8 volts. I'm going to shut that off, save our cells, and we're at 114.62. 114.62 divided by 6. That's 19.1 amp hours. They were saying minimum 19.5. These are some Headway cells that we've just got in. This is the 38120 HP cell from Headway that they're making in a little red cylindrical cell. This is, if I'm not mistaken, an 8.5 amp hour cell, but high power. That should be analogous to our A123s. And these have a little M6 screw in the end of them. James Delgado of a company he's calling Headway headquarters in Issaquah, Washington. This was the home of the David Coy and the company that did us out of $10,000 worth. James very nicely sent us box of these, I don't know, 12 or 24 of them. We're going to play with them, test them a little bit, maybe make a bicycle out of them. And I think this is kind of an interesting form factor. I'm not too sure how to put them all together, but we'll work on a module for this and do some testing next week and let you know how these stand up. I know Sebastian Bourgeois did something similar in his Porsche 911 and seemed happy with them. So we're going to take a look at some of the hardware options for connecting them and test the cells and see what they'll put out next week. In the meantime, these A123 cells, I have to tell you, 19 amp hours a piece. FOB China is $20. They're close to $28 by the time you get them in your driveway. And that's not really a bargain. You're going to save nothing on weight or volume. You will go no farther and have no more energy in your car. However, the power output of them is very impressive. I would say 20 C's a lock, and we actually saw 23 C in the test here today. 470 amps for a few seconds out of a 20 amp hour cell is quite impressive. And it opens the door for smaller, lighter packs for racing, or perhaps you just want to build an electric car and you don't want to spend $10,000 on the batteries. You can do a half-size pack of these that'll take you 40 miles or 50 miles. Most people's average drive, again, is 39.4 miles. So if you want to play the game and watch it a little bit, you can have an electric car that's quite serviceable in 40 or 50 miles if you know what you're doing. And you gain the advantages of long life and not having to replace them, and a very lightweight. If you do a half pack of these, you're looking at a battery pack that's 200 or 250 pounds that'll drive a car. Any car on the road now isn't even going to notice 250 pounds. That's the weight of coats and junk in the trunk of most cars is a couple of 100 pounds. So we're down to something fairly trivial there. And so we're going to look at some of these higher power batteries in lighter weight. I would say normally I would still pick a large prismatic to do an EV, but these are certainly an option that offer a little bit different approach to it. You can do a car with a $5,000 battery pack that'll do full power to the motor and the controller, and a 40 or 50 mile range might be an option that's attractive to some of you. We'll stay after it. This episode of EVTV is brought to you by the Winston Battery Company Limited, makers of high-capacity lithium yttrium rare earth cells, including the popular 160 amp-hour model featuring cycle lives in excess of 5,000 cycles when discharged to 70%, the longest useful working life of any available battery of any chemistry. A leading battery technology scientist, inventor, and entrepreneur since 1995, Mr. Winston Chung envisions a new world of clean electric power for the dawn of a new era of electric vehicles. For your next electric vehicle design project, contact Winston Battery Limited. Energy for a bright future.
Well, that's a little better. That's not quite as Frankenstein as the last one. It's getting better, Jack. You're at fourth grade art class now. You're upgrading.
No, it's still ugly, but I think it's
starting to work. Yeah.
More reliable and easier to deal with. What do you got going on the Swallow here, Kimosabe? We've got our Elcon 2500 charger
And,
on here.
and I think, are we charging right now, aren't we?
You know, we should be.
Yeah. I think
That's
we're
what
at
that
129
annoying-
volts.
Are we?
Yeah.
I've got our Xantrex already hooked up
Yep.
for you to plug into the new dash. 129.1 volts, 17 and a half ampers.
Yeah, so that's a nice little charger, actually. That's
And
the,
so-
what, the Elcon 2500.
Yeah, we've got it hooked up to 240.
Uh-huh.
It's doing 17 and a half amps. What's that going to do in a 100 amp hour pack? 5 hours and 45 minutes, full charge.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah, that's
from
not bad.
flat empty.
Yeah.
And it's a lot lighter than the one we were going to put in there. I've got it on a charge curve that'll terminate at 133 volts. And we have
Okay.
used 38 cells typically.
Yeah.
With this AC50 in the past. We've always done 36.
36, yeah.
I'm told that it kind of coughs at 130 volts. And if we charge
Yeah.
to 133 and remove the charger, it should fairly rapidly come down to about 126, 127 volts.
That'd be great. That would give
And
us.
so that'll be the maximum voltage we can put into this. It's in theory, I don't remember if it was a 96 or 108 volt controller that they rated it,
I think 96 is what it's rated for. I think so.
but it'll go to 130. We've
Yeah.
got the cables to it.
Yeah, we got
and
some
have tied
cables
the
in.
charger
Yep.
to that. We just got it plugged into 240 right now. You only need 240 volts lead to do it. I'm going to put a little J1772, probably like we did the Edge, just a resistor and a diode.
Just so he can charge if he needs, yeah, with 1772.
And when you just hit it with the plug, it comes on. Because we don't have any trick lights or anything going when we're charging. In fact, all this will be under cover in
Under
the
the
body.
body,
You
yeah.
won't be able to see it. We'll put a thing on the outside where you plug into it, and that'll be pretty much it.
Well, we've got a GPS Speedo coming for him, one of our speed huts that we like. We ordered that today.
Okay.
We've got more
Yes,
cases.
as it turns out, your speedometer wasn't even hooked up, Lee. Now, you have to have one to get the car license.
Yes, that's right. They always
And
want to
so
check that in the
you're gonna
inspection.
have to call for one of these.
Yeah.
Brian has found a smallish one, GPS speedometer with an odometer.
Right, a 3 3/8 size with an
you do need
odometer.
an odometer.
Yeah.
So you'll have that, the Xantrex, that 840
Off the Curtis.
spyglass for the Curtis, and maybe we'll keep his original voltmeter.
They had
just
3
to-
holes in the dash anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's probably a lot of information for, it all revolves around how far can you go, and and then look at your pack with the Xantrex and what did I use. I mean, that gives you a pretty good indication.
We need an ignition switch on that dash.
Oh, that's right, there isn't one.
There isn't one.
Well, there we go. Put an ignition switch in. We probably got a couple of them laying around.
Yeah, we do.
Then we ran.
Oh my goodness, the low carb pedal, we are busted on that, and they're out on vacation.
They're closed this week. Yeah, we have 2 of them that don't seem to work.
We don't get it. We get a
constant.
We hook it up to a 5 volt and ground, and we get a constant 2.2 volts out
And-
on
and-
both outputs.
And nothing when you.
And no change when you
No.
move the pedal. And we had 2 of them in the box. I said, hey, maybe the thing's bad. Let's just get the other one. Same symptom. Well, we've been through the cable, the power supply, my meters, everything.
Everything.
These things do not work on the bench. And we have one in the
on the Cobra.
Cobra that did.
We just popped it in. We didn't even test it.
Right, but this one we
Yeah.
tested on the bench and cannot get it to work in any scenario, and so that's we're going to have to get with low car.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to them on Tuesday and see what's up with that.
But I'd like to see this thing running here in another week or so.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. We've come up with I think Rod has come up with a way to do the seats. We were working on the seats. We've got no, you guys can't see, we've got the body up off the floor over here. Because I think I'm going to start to do some wiring for the dash and everything out of the car where I can see it. It was really tough working on that yesterday, pulling that dash out and things. And we've got to do a little fabrication, little trimming of the body in a couple of places to go over the boxes and things. But yeah, I think we're getting. I think that we're getting pretty close.
One of our viewers wanted more detail on the battery boxes that are the battery just sitting on the hump. Actually, they are.
They are. They're sitting on the
They're
hump,
just sitting
but
on
they're
the hump.
sandwiched
We've got
in there.
little sides of the other two boxes sticking up, and angle irons on each end that kind of retain the batteries in
keep
place.
them, keep them like
and
this,
then a polycarbonate across the top.
Yeah.
So they're quite secure.
Yeah, it's fairly rigid.
And
yeah.
then they're bolted together, and so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that let us put a center row. What did we do? 7 or 9?
7, I believe, in that center row. Yeah.
Yeah. And that gets us to 38 cells. All up there, none of them back here. Much cleaner layout back here, and none of this hooked up to the body. I'm still trying, Lee, to get this, and I'm going to fail on this, but trying to get it where the body comes on and off as easily as possible. But the body's probably 300 pounds, you're saying. It takes 4 or 5 guys anyway.
Yeah,
so.
to wrestle it around in precision to put it on. Yeah, I mean, today we humped it up, but it was, but it is heavy. There's some wood and some box steel in there, in that frame. But that's pretty much the Swallow is starting to come together. So now we're really doing wiring, seating. We've got a wire coming back that will have 12 volt back to the back here. We can distribute. It's coming pretty fast now. It's moving along.
Okay. Well, let's keep after it, and we'll just wear this project out.
There you go.
We're going to try to have her done by halftime 2012.
2012 or 13.
Or maybe 2013.
13, that's right.
For Lee. And so, yeah, this was, I think, $683 with shipping.
That's a good deal.
And I got it from Justin at EV Evolve. That's where I get these.
Okay, yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Out in Denver.
Denver, yeah.
And
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, for this battery pack, 5-hour full charge is not bad.
no, it's not.
And have a lighter anyway than the 5,000 watt.
Well, that 5,000 watt would have charged it in about 2
a couple
hours.
of hours,
So that's what I was after there. And I already had it here. But this is lighter, and
I think it's going to fit a little better into the body too.
it will.
Yeah.
And so that's how to do that. We'll put a J1772 connector. You're going to have to get some EVSE to charge to, Lee.
Yeah, you're going to need to get one.
So,
Well, we showed them all the GE last week. That's an option.
all righty. Have you got anything else?
That's about it.
Let's let them go for this week. You may return to your normal lives now, as this is the end of EVTV for another week.
For 2011.
Actually, for another year.
Another year.
isn't it?
That's right. You got to wait an entire year.
Have you got any
To see.
predictions for 2012?
Let's see. The Cardinals are going to win the World Series.
Is that right? Even without
Even
Pujols?
without Pujols, the Cardinals are going to win the World Series. The Broncos are going to win the Super Bowl.
I predict we are going to get the Escalade done.
Yeah, we'll get the Escalade
However much
done.
you want to avoid it, we're going to
We're
get
gonna
it
get
done.
If I could get him to stop doing battery modules back here. But pretty cool, wasn't that? Those A123s are pretty cool batteries.
We're going to have to stay after that again. If you, Nabel Hankey was at the show. He says he's going to take a crack at it.
Yeah.
I've got several people looking at this concept of how to put these cells
How
together.
to build the modules.
From the testing we did this week, I've concluded if those cells are going to be available at $20 a piece from China, and that came in about, I'd say, $28 and change with the shipping
and
some
every-
customs
all
and
in,
stuff.
huh?
You
Okay.
know, with everything all in, it's it's $28.
Because we had like
a cell.
$100, $120 in customs on those 300 cells, I think.
$131.
Yeah, we had a little bit of customs.
The UPS guy wanted a check.
Yeah.
And, so, some strange things coming from China.
Yeah.
It would be all better if A123 would sell them to
Just
us
some
for
right here.
like $15 from Michigan. But
Yeah.
if they would sell them to us, I'm sure they'd want $40 a cell or something. And so
Yeah.
it's all part of God's plan.
Yeah,
they get what they deserve.
It's kind of circling around. Yeah.
And I think we're getting them from the factory.
Yeah, that's right. But at that price, though, I think that's what your point you're making, that is really an option, a high-powered option, those A123 cells. Yeah.
It gives us an option and some flexibility. We need to do a build on those cells.
Yeah.
We have 300 of them now. We're going to
Right.
package them and put them in a car.
Put them in a car and
type.
see what we can do. Okay.
And see what they can do. We could have done the Escalade with those cells.
Yeah.
That's how
Wouldn't have had a
strong
lot
they
of
are.
range, but we could have done it. Yeah.
No, we wouldn't have had a lot of range, but
We could have motivated it down the road.
It would have gone down the road. It would
Yeah.
put out 2,000.
I'd have started breaking parts.
Overkill is always appropriate. See, when you have that kind of overage, you don't have to use it. You get better life out of those
Right.
cells. Not doing them the way I did today in the test.
Right, working them to death.
23C is not really what you want to do.
Yeah.
But it is
can do it.
a thing.
Yeah.
So there you go. We'll talk to you all later.
See you next year.